With all the hype surrounding the launch of Xiaomi's Redmi Note 11 series, is it really worth the excitement? Especially since the global take has swapped out the MediaTek Dimensity 920, what the Chinese versions have, for the Qualcomm Snapdragon 695. Let's deep dive into the Redmi Note 11 Pro 5G. Out of the box, which packs in all the essentials like a massive fast charger and USB Type-A to Type-C cable, the Redmi 11 Note Pro 5G looks like a tiny blocky monolith. It's certainly something you don't expect in a crowded space of slim and curved designs. This is due to the boxy design that this next-gen Redmi Note entry now sports. Even with the rounded corners, the chassis, all 6.67 inches of it, looks snappy and sharp. Personally, this is a welcome sight with curved edge form factors now being the rage everywhere. All in all, the Redmi Note 11 Pro 5G looks impressive. Even the backplate done up in matte finish that adds a nice clean and polished look to the graphite grey colorway is outstanding to look at. Only the camera bump ruined the sleek design as it consists of two raised cutouts that house the trio of lenses. Handling-wise, it is very much a smartphone that demands to be in large hands. This 6.67-inch Full HD Plus AMOLED display is relatively easy to navigate with two thumbs and an index finger, but it can be challenging when you're trying to use this large and tall smartphone with one hand. This block-like design though, with its 202 grams, gives it a nice heft that promises easy everyday use. Would the large display, which punches out 700 nits at high brightness mode and 1200 nits for peak brightness, be a cause for concern? When using the Redmi Note 11 Pro 5G as our daily driver and not having reading mode turned on, there have been no instances of any eye strain. Of course, it is advisable to engage the auto brightness function and configure the warm tones to activate themselves in the late evening. How does this really bright display perform with enriched content? Most of the Full HD streams, 1080p 60 and 1440p 60 content on YouTube with some Netflix binging in between really popped. With the AMOLED display panel and 120Hz refresh rate, visuals turn out silky smooth and colors are vivid even when it leaned towards red hues more. It's unfortunate the black pixels blended in some areas, making the darks look splotchy. Thankfully, the soundstage of the Redmi Note 11 Pro 5G more than makes up for the slight lag in multimedia experience. We played a variety of tracks on Spotify and YouTube Music, featuring video game soundtracks and anime songs, popular classics, Korean and Japanese pop, R&B, and the entire track list from the Super Bowl halftime show. While most phones with stereo speakers, even flagships, produce really loud audio outputs that favor mid to high frequencies, the Redmi Note 11 Pro 5G though produces a very nice, well-balanced mix. Even as sharp cymbal crashes came out loud and jarring, the bass backtracks that can be heard on proper speakers showed up as well. Some of the underlying baritones from the rappers at the Super Bowl event even showed up, and that is beyond impressive. Hats off to Xiaomi, as this is usually a core strength for another Chinese smartphone maker. Having switched out from the somewhat high-performance processor in the China version to something a little bit more power efficient, the first question that comes to mind is, can it perform under loads? With social media scrolling, gaming, and chatting, all of that is smooth sailing. There was a slight lag or two when loading up apps, but that is to be expected with the lower spec Qualcomm processor. Gaming, especially those with plenty of animated cutscenes and fast-moving action sequences, looks and plays with no issues. From Honkai Impact 3 to Fate Grand Order and some quick drives in Asphalt 9, everything ran like it should. Even with maxed out graphics, no significant slowdowns appeared. The benchmarks told a different story as only the wildlife test on 3D Mark managed to run, showing an overall score of 1,207. Geekbench 4 and 5 pulled up some average results too. The former produced a score of 3,160 and 7,728 for single-core and multi-core tests, while the latter came out far shorter with a 686 and 1,819 rating for the same test. As for OpenCL and Vulkan benchmarking, the Redmi Note 11 Pro 5G put out 1,408 and 1,301. While it seems that this next-gen mid-range entry for the Redmi Note line can punch hard, it didn't really perform as well when under heavy loads that benchmarks are known for. Surprisingly, throughout all-day downloading of games and playing those games at maxed out graphics, there is almost no heat coming out of this newcomer to the Redmi Note line. Even benchmarks didn't drive up the temperature by much as recorded during the PC Mark Work 3.0 performance test, as recorded readings confirmed that the heat idled at 36 degrees to 39 degrees Celsius. Spending an entire day to download games and updates took out only 60% from the full charge, and the battery only dropped to 20% by the day's end after a few rounds of games and scrolling through social media and chats. It didn't even drain out through the night and only needed 35 minutes of being plugged in for the battery to be at 90% charged. On paper, the Redmi Note 11 Pro 5G rocks an impressive rear-mounted triple-lens camera array. This includes a 108-megapixel main wide lens that rocks a 1/1.52-inch sensor and two smaller lenses, an 8-megapixel ultra-wide and a 2-megapixel macro. Up front, there is a 16-megapixel f2.4 snapper. While the selfie shooter does a good job of taking portraits with a slight overexposure, the ones at the back are just decent at best. When taking shots in well-lit locations, everything turns out nice with just the right amount of hue and saturation balance. In low light though, things start to get grainy and night shots are just possible at best. On a surprisingly positive note, the macro lens is one of the better ones as photos taken in close range came into focus very quickly and captured minute details of the subject. As for zoom, interestingly, when used with a 1:1 ratio, everything looked great up to 6 times zoom, while 10 times zoom became a bit of a mess of colors. When doing the same zoom test with widescreen, everything turned out to be a sad mix of grainy noise. Video resolution, on the other hand, tops at only 1080p, which is quite the letdown, factoring how most phones are already 4K equipped and how shifting exposures are noticeable when moving the camera around. Not the results to look forward to coming from a 108-megapixel sensor. The Redmi Note 11 Pro 5G is priced at 1,299 ringgit or 429 Sing dollars.
All in all, the Redmi Note 11 Pro 5G does perform as promised and only falls below expectations when it comes to photography. What it does deliver on is super fast charging and exceptional battery life. So, is it worth the 1,299 ringgit for the spec-up variant? While it may be a sore point for some, it does offer decent performance and the right looks to match the price.